ओम नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूरये सच्चित सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. So we were in our previous Raj Yoga class, we were discussing about the 5 different kleshas which impact our thought process and also the state of our mind. So if we want to control our mind, you have to control the kleshas. The kleshas are pain-bearing obstructions. That is the translation. The literal translation of the word klesha is, it is a sort of pain-bearing, pain-causing obstruction which results in unhealthy or disturbing thoughts. So thoughts can be good or can be bad, but they can be equally disturbing. It's not that only the bad thoughts disturb you. Even the good thoughts can create ripples in the mind. The goal of yoga is to control the bad thoughts by superimposing good thoughts on them, which is known as pratipaksha bhavana. Changing the it literally means changing the connection between memories and impulses. So our impulses are as a result of these kleshas, these pain-bearing obstructions. We react in a particular way when we get some kind of input from the world outside or internal input. Even when we close our eyes, certain memories come to haunt us. We have, for example, nightmares when we sleep, even when we are not conscious. Certain thought processes are going on in our mind. So that is the pain-bearing obstruction. The goal of all yoga is to remove all the dukkha or sorrow from our life and attain nirvana or samadhi or whatever you call. There are different ways of expressing the same truth. That is disconnecting the purusha and the prakriti which is causing all the problems by connecting us to this transient world. So how do we do it? So from the standpoint of modern psychology, we have to sublimate our thoughts, sublimate our feelings, not the thoughts, the kleshas. So we have to reduce them into a tanu avastha. That is what we uh, discussed so long. That is, there is raga, there is a kind of attachment to the things that we like, dvesha, hatred towards the thing that I don't like. So our life is full of likes and dislikes, attachments and hatred. We are attached to certain things which we think we like. We have trained our mind like in that way, in that fashion, that we have chosen certain objects and convinced our mind that you like these things. And there are certain things which we have been trained since childhood. It has become a habit that I don't like these things. The moment it comes, you have trained, the mind has been trained, the memories have been trained in such a way that you hate certain things. That is known as dvesha. So this raga and dvesha are causing all the problems. Thoughts by themselves, as we discussed, the cognition by themselves do not cause any problems. But when the kleshas attached to that, when we have strong likes and dislikes, then the problem comes. So, so from the point of view of modern psychology, we'll see, we were discussing that Pratipaksha Bhavana means that we have to sublimate our emotions, our lower impulses, which cause us to act in a very irrational way. We are sometimes, we get angry, we get upset, we get jealous. We are not in control of our thoughts. We react in a very bad way and then we repent later on that we should not have reacted. We should have had a calm mind. But we do not know the technique how to maintain our calm not to give way to strong likes and dislikes. Even if you don't like certain things, you should train your mind. One should train one's mind to somehow bear with it. That is known as titiksha. Titiksha is a very important quality, forbearance as it is known. So the Sri Ramakrishna and Srima Sharda Devi went to the extent of saying that one who has forbearance lives. One who can bear the pair of opposites in a very calm way. For that, you have to sublimate your thoughts, sublimate the lower impulses, and and see that they are expressed through higher creative channels. Suppose you have uh, intense love for certain objects, you sublimate it and convert it into love for God. That is what Ishta does. The God whom you worship, you direct all your emotions, lower emotions, to him, and then you will see they get purified and they get sublimated. For example, the energy of raga, intense attachment to certain things, certain places, certain foods, they can be directed towards the Lord in the form of love or aspiration to have his vision, to have his holy company. So that energy of raga, raga means attachment to the things that you like, can be converted into intense love or aspiration for God, and the energy of dvesha can be sublimated into some kind of determination to overcome all obstacles. Now you hate certain things. It's a strong power. The power of hatred is, but it destroys you if you direct it towards the external world. But if you direct it towards the objects of the senses, or to overcome obstacles which are causing you, causing a restlessness in the mind, convert it into a firm determination, willpower. That energy of fear, or that energy of, you can say, hatred, can be converted into, can be sublimated. The dvesha can be sublimated into some kind of willpower. And the energy of fear, that is abhinivesha, which is the third pain bearing obstruction, or the obstruction in our spiritual life, the klesha, which makes us fear, the fear of death, the fear of clinging to life, the clinging to life that we have, it can be converted into self surrender to God. You say God fearing, but actually you do not fear God. You just surrender to him and think that he is taking care of your destiny, taking care of your fortunes. He will decide what is there. We resign everything to his will. Sublimating one's will to the Lord is how you can deal with the emotion of fear. That is why they say self-surrender. When we surrender to the Lord, we get rid of the emotion of fear. Now, Pratipaksha Bhavana also means that it's a technique where the connections between your old memories and impulses, you have to change the connections. How do we do it? In two ways it can be done. First, our mental picture that we get is replaced with another. For example, you have the memory of, say, a sweet meat which is harmful for you. Perhaps you have diabetes, you should not be eating a particular sweet meat. So in the mind, when you are passing through a particular shop, in your mind, the picture of one particular sweetmeat which you like very much comes to your mind. So you immediately replace that mental picture with another picture. The picture of your medicine or something else, you replace it with another picture, so that the memory of that sweet, the liking that you have for that sweet, one, you remove the picture from your mind, the picture of the sweetmeat, then you don't have any problems. But if it keeps on recurring, if that picture keeps on recurring, then you will be, your impulses will tell you to go to the store and buy it and just pop it in your mouth. So they say you replace the picture or go away from that place which tries to give you some kind of impulse to grab and eat the things that you like. Or else, you suppose the picture can remain the same. You will think of the sweet, but replace the bad impulse to eat it yourself You perhaps buy it also. You have those sweets, you go to the shop, the picture remains the same. The mental picture is converted into a physical picture. You buy the sweet, and then seeing some children around, you just distribute it and replace it with a good impulse of not consuming it yourself, but uh, distributing, giving it to somebody. So that is why this automatically it arouses a good emotion that you have given up this sweet and you are enjoying somebody else eating it. So this, so the hatred towards a wrongdoer, suppose somebody has done something bad, then you replace it with another emotion, that of forgiveness or compassion. So that is why the idea of forgiving and forgetting. The psychologists say it is easy to forgive a person, but it is difficult to forget it. So titiksha means you have to not only forgive a person by creating the opposite emotion, but forgive him, or you have to genuinely cause that bad feeling or that ill feeling to totally vanish. That is known as tanukarana. It may be a temporary measure, but if you persistently go on forgiving people, then that forgiveness develops in you some kind of compassion, and that feeling of hatred towards that person or towards people in general will go away. So there are two methods of reducing our impulses, the effect of impulses on our thoughts. One is kriya yoga, which we discussed long ago, and the second is pratipaksha bhavana. A third method, as I discussed, I think I mentioned it, but now we'll discuss it in great detail, is to detach the will. It's a very effective method how to deal with our different feelings and different kleshas which are troubling us, envy, fear, anger, all these things you have to handle. There are different ways, or two ways we discussed. There is a third, more effective and a very good way, is to detach the will. Mental pictures and emotions both can affect only if our will supports them. Now you see, for example, you have in your mind a mental picture of a sweet meat. Now that sweet is there in the shop opposite the road, and but you tell you have, if you have your willpower under your control, then it becomes easy. You detach the will, tell the mind you are not going to go across the road, you just go ahead. Let there be so many shops, but you will not go there. So detaching, if you detach the will, the objects or the emotions that attract you, the raga klesha which is attracting you towards that object also will vanish. Both the object and the klesha, the perception and the klesha will lose their power, and slowly you will find your kleshas will be reduced to the tanu state, a very, very fine state where it may arise, but it will immediately be pushed down by your willpower. So this becomes effective only when you do tapas swadhyaya. Tapas means austerity, trying to do exactly the opposite of what you like. So you cancel away all your impulses. Swadhyaya means to study deeply the nature of the self. That is what we do in our Wednesday class. We try to do swadhyaya. Adhyaya means to study, self study. Self study is not studying alone, it means studying the self. What is the deeper reality within me? What is the consciousness uh, which gives impulses, which causes all these thoughts? Where is the root cause? Who is the one who is observing all these things and reacting? That is known as swadhyaya, trying to search for the self. And Ishwar Pranidhana means surrendering to the Lord, to any Ishvara or to the Supreme Lord, because there are certain things which are beyond the human capacity. So if you do that, tapas, swadhyaya and Ishwar Pranidhana, which put together are known as Kriya Yoga. It is something similar to Karma Yoga, but not exactly the same. But anyway, tapas, swadhyaya and Ishwar Pranidhana will give you, is known as Kriya Yoga, and they will reduce the force of the impulses. It will not vanish. It will be vanish. It will totally vanish if you do sadhana for a long time. And for that, even mantra may be required. The japa of the mantra, the intrinsic power of the bija, as I told you, they help us to reduce our kleshas and reduce its effectivity, its impact on us to a large extent. So that is what we understand from this sutra. Now, what is the nature of this Tanu Avastha? This Ishvara Pranidhana is very good, provided we have that kind of faith and we have the power of intense and persistent prayer. Mostly the Christian mystics, they depended more on this prayer. They depended more on the personal God, the intervention by the divine grace of Ishvara, that is Jesus or the Son of God, as they say. They prayed and prayed and prayed and thus converted all their emotions to the Tanu Avastha. All the kleshas were automatically taken care of. But this has to be intense and persistent. There are other methods like yoga, repetition of the name. Even if you don't have devotion or emotional attachment, or you don't believe in God with form, for such people, yoga prescribes the Kriya Yoga, Tapas Swadhyaya, and if they can't do Ishwar Pranidhana, at least they can repeat the mantra, repeat Om and many other mantras which can help it. So whatever be the path, the three different ways adopted to reduce the impact of these kleshas, it is a very important aspect. This tanutva, this reducing the impact of our kleshas is a very, very important step. Without that, no matter how much spiritual progress we make, or how much we do our sadhana or upasana, if this is the only way to determine how much we have made progress in spiritual life. It is the natural state in which a yogi is expected to remain until he attains higher illumination. At least he should. It is like the base camp of the Mount Everest. When you are climbing the Mount Everest, you may not reach the peak. But the first hurdle is you go to a place where you can take some rest. It is known as the base camp. So this Tanu Avastha of the mind is necessary even before we start to meditate. People want to meditate, but they don't know that unless we do other sadhana, other upasana, other spiritual practices which help us to reduce the restlessness or the turbulence of our thoughts. First, they have to be handled very, very carefully. They have to be dealt with. These are the preliminary steps: yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. We do all these things, and pratyahara. The first 5 steps, in fact, are very much necessary. Dharana, up to dharana, are necessary to remain in a state where our old impulses, or you may say our samskaras, do not pop up. The bubbles do not rise to the surface. When the bubble is formed at the bottom of the ocean, it is negligible. It doesn't cause any problem. It's only when the pressure becomes less and the bubble becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and when it bursts upon the surface, we feel its impact. So also, our samskaras, our karmashaya, which determines our future, that is hidden in a potential form. It is there in a potential form, in a seed form, as a result of all our past actions, which we have done thoughtlessly. If we had acted thoughtfully, these kleshas would have been less, but we have acted thoughtlessly. We have just acted impulsively. We have not bothered to consider the effect of our random and haphazard thinking, haphazard actions, haphazard interactions with other people. All the things that we have accumulated over several lives are stored. Now we have to deal with it. First is, don't accumulate more, reduce the baggage. Then think of what to do with the already accumulated karma. So this is what the yogi is supposed to do when he is proceeding. He finds it difficult to control his mind because of this trouble, this constant bubbling up of old impressions, which are there in seed form. They are sprouting again and again. The moment they get the necessary environment and water and other things, the seed will sprout. So the only way to stop the seeds from sprouting is to convert it into dagda bija, or you can burn those seeds. So in that state, when you are more or less able to control the impulses, you will see a strange kind of deep interior peace and calm. But don't mistake it for the higher realization. This is just the beginning, the basic minimum. If the Tanu Avastha has not been reached, then yoga is impossible. You may talk of yoga, we may all read about yoga, but it becomes impossible unless we come to the base camp. Coming to the base camp means to more or less reside in a state which gives some kind of deep interior peace. So this raga or dvesha, these have to be controlled. Now, will is known as dhriti. Dhriti means the willpower. It has a technical name of dhriti. So desire, or as it is said in Buddhism, desire or is in Sanskrit is known as kama. Icha or desire, it is known as kama. A sankalpa, when your will gets attached, everybody has a willpower. You see a cigarette and you cannot restrain your will. Your will goes and attaches to that desire to smoke. And then actually you pick up the cigarette and start smoking. So between seeing a cigarette or imagining a cigarette or going to the shop, buying it and then smoking it, it requires the effort of the will. That has a technical word in yoga. It is known as sankalpa. So this sankalpa is so important in our life that in all the puja, the worship rituals that we do, all the pujas begin with some kind of sankalpa. We pray to the Lord that we are undertaking this puja or activity. Please see that I am able to complete it. Whatever assignment you take up, there was a system in ancient India where you had to make a sankalpa. Sankalpa means a vow or a firm determination that whatever I undertake, I will complete it. So when the willpower or dhriti gets attached to a desire, a sankalpa takes place. Sankalpa are of four kinds. This sankalpa, which is also known as will, when the will is attached to a desire, it is known as sankalpa. It is known as vishaya sankalpa, one kind of sankalpa. Second is phala sankalpa. Phala means fruit, the effects of the action. One is Vishaya Sankalpa, second is Phala Sankalpa, then there is a Karma Sankalpa and Kartrutva Sankalpa. Karma means that which, I'll explain what it is. It is the progressive giving up of these four kinds of Sankalpa without giving the work itself. That is the essential discipline of Karma Yoga. What do you mean by Karma Yoga? It's not giving up the work, giving up the Sankalpa. The Vishaya Sankalpa, Phala Sankalpa, Karma Sankalpa and Kartritva Sankalpa. Kartritva means I am doing this action, or the feeling that if I don't do this action, nobody else can do it. I mean, that kind of attachment of ego to that action, that is known as Kartrutva. Kartrutva means a strong feeling of ego which is associated with the action. If we do it with humility, said, now I have done it, somebody else might do it, what is there to brag about it? Then that kartrutva becomes less, then that karma does not bind you. Any action done with humility and service does not increase your karma. So these are all very important things. We do not know how to perform karma yoga, and that is why our karmas get attached to kleshas, and then it complicates And then we try to solve the problem uh, by meditation. We want to solve it, but meditation does not work till the through Kriya Yoga, this Tanukarana has been attained. So karma sankalpa means to do certain things. You have uh, the four kinds of sankalpa, as I told you: Vishaya sankalpa, then phala sankalpa, the phala, the intense desire to get the result. You're not bothered about what you are doing, you are more bothered about the result. Even before you have done the work, you want some guarantee that you will get the result. That is known as phala sankalpa. So also there are these things you have we have to understand. By doing work, you do not get attached, or you do not create more samskaras. It is only when the will is attached, the dhriti is attached, and sankalpa is created, that sankalpa has to be destroyed. So it is it is experienced as a kind of power. This desire, when you do any desire motivated work with the effect of will on sankalpa, it gives a sense of power, a sense of achievement. Nothing wrong in that, but if it is misused, that power can cause problems. That is why Bhagavan Sri Krishna told Arjuna that don't think you are doing it. This work has been already done by the Lord. It has been destined. You are just an instrument. Just be an instrument and go on working. Don't be so proud that you can defeat the army in front of you. You can never do it unless there is the power of the Lord, the divine power. So surrender yourself. At the end of Gita, Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha ishyami ma shuchah. He says, I will deliver you from all the sins. You just go on working. Sarva dharman parityajya. By surrendering your sankalpas, by surrendering your deep desire for good results and all these things, just go on focusing on the work at hand. Go on doing it in a spirit of humility, without the karma sankalpa, without the kartrutva sankalpa, without the phala sankalpa, and without intense desire. Detach the will and do it perfectly, whatever you have undertaken, but don't get attached to it. So this detached action which is detached because of lack of sankalpa, the attachment of will to the action causes trouble for us, and that is the result of our karma which we have accumulated through ages. And slowly we have to detach ourselves and remove the effects of our old karmas and see that no new fresh karma is involved. Not by avoiding work. By avoiding work or avoiding activity, we can never make any progress. We have to do activity. That is what Karma Yoga tells us. You constantly act. That's the only way you can nullify the effect of old karma. If you say, I'll just sit, I'll not do anything. Of course, doing japa is also karma, doing prayer is also karma. But anything that you do which takes you towards God, that karma has to be done in a very intense way. So that's why when suffering comes, when you are in trouble, you are in a very complicated situation, you have to work hard. You have to be thankful to the Lord, because that is the way you are working out your karma. So the essential discipline of Karma Yoga to work without these four types of sankalpa: Vishaya sankalpa, Phala sankalpa, Karma sankalpa, and Kartrutva sankalpa. Doing work without ego, doing work without intense desire uh, to get the desired fruit. We should not be motivated that the fruit may come or may not come, the effect may come or may not come. I just have to ensure that the cause is perfect, the means are perfect. The end may or may not come now. It may come now or it may not come immediately. It may come after some time, but we should not be bothered. If we are always focused on the end rather than the means of doing it, then we don't do Karma Yoga and we suffer. We neither get the fruit, whatever we have done is lost. So that is what Karma Yoga means, or detaching the will from the work that you do means. So it is that first freedom that we get as a result of this. One who gets tanutva, one who is able to control his kleshas, is known as moral freedom. It is a step in our goal to attain true spiritual freedom. We have not yet got mukti, but the first stage has to be covered. Some kind of moral freedom, some kind of mental peace or poise. As Holy Mother said, I never knew what trouble is. She was living in the midst of all the difficulties and problems of life, and nobody was in more precarious situation than her. There was poverty, there were relatives who were troubling her, her own brothers were giving her trouble. But in spite of all this, she had, uh, as a perfect demonstration of the principles of yoga, she had this inward freedom, the moral freedom, the spiritual freedom, which is the ultimate goal of yoga. So that's why she said, I felt as if there is a picture of bliss and peace within my heart. The external circumstances did not appear to shake her. So the tanutva is one of the ways to make the kleshas ineffective, is the goal. They will not appear unless there is a very strong impulse. The impulse, the tanutva, which you have done by constant practice of yoga, you may see the objects of desire, but unless there is a very strong stimulus, somebody forces you, brings the cigarette or the sweet before you and forces you to eat, you will not. You will not run after it, at least. That is a state to be attained. So, unless a very strong stimulus is there, unless you are exposed to a very strong stimulus, all these temptations will not disturb you. So, one another test of whether you have managed to attain that tanutva is that the dream life becomes very free from all the you start getting less and less nightmares. Even if you dream, they are all very pleasant dreams. So this tanutva, when you reach this kind of state, it is known as the third degree of vairagya in Patanjali's yoga. It is known as ekendriya. Ekendriya means you are reaching a state where you are not under the control of your kleshas. Even in dream they don't disturb you. In a waking state, of course, you need to have control. You can't be impulsive all the time. But even in dream, because most of the time in waking state, somehow we manage to control ourselves. But in dream, it becomes so tiring. That's why our sleep is disturbed. A nightmarish dreaming state, when there are so many things which you have controlled during the waking state, but they come to haunt you in your dream, that shows that the tanutva has not been attained. The kleshas are still active. They are not active when you are waking up, and when you are waking state, you have controlled them, but you have not fully reduced its impact so that they don't even disturb you in dream. That is a higher kind of vairagya you need. So this, however, even attaining to this state is not irreversible. So there is a possibility that a yogi may fall down from this state if he is not careful. So the kleshas may become very weak, but they are still there. They are not burnt up. That is why the Dagda Bija Avastha, which happens when the light, which I was speaking of in our 4 classes which we conducted on the idea of mantra upasana or japa, where we discussed that first the pratyagatma or the prajna, the dhi, the buddhi, the light of buddhi has to be awakened, which burns, that prajna burns the kleshas, burns the seeds of our future, the possibility of future kleshas to appear. Now, how does it happen? It happens by intense meditation, intense visualization, intense repetition of the name, where the yogi reaches that state. It's known as Vashikara. Vashikara means self-mastery. So it is a type of vairagya when you are in control of your whole destiny, your whole life. You decide how you will react to external stimulus. You will decide whether you will be angry or not. Your buddhi is in control of your whole personality. That is why this awakening of buddhi is so important. The Gayatri mantra, all the mantras are having the same meaning. Oh Lord, please help me to awaken my buddhi, the subtle aspect of our mind, where the will becomes so pure and strong that there is a kind of self mastery, which is also known as Vashikara. So tanutva of the kleshas, the reduction of the impact of the kleshas, and then totally burning that, is a natural state of mind found in sadhakas. So on sadhakas, they are assumed to have reached this temporary. They may have not burnt all the seeds, but at least they have prevented the seeds from sprouting into newer desires, new restlessness. So that is why you have to remember uh, these wonderful ideas that yoga expects us to have even before we begin our sadhana. Then we of course have the other ideas of vichinna, that means repression, that is exclusion of certain ideas and emotions from our conscious mind. Psychologically, if you see, there is a vichinna avastha. Tanu avastha is desirable, but for some people, they have to have a stopgap arrangement. They have to at least repress, they have to exclude certain ideas from their daily routine and emotions from the conscious mind of which the person is not aware. It is known as repression. Unconsciously, you are doing it. You have some fear, something telling you that society will not like if you do all these actions. So you somehow repress your impulse. You do it in an unconscious way. That psychology does not, I mean, Indian psychology says is harmful. You have to do suppression. We have to do it consciously. You have to do it through yoga, through the right process. You try to control these impulses. But as a child does, out of fear, the child they push these unconscious experiences into the unconscious and they are there very powerful in seed form. Because of the fear of parents, it will not do certain things. The young children, for example, we cause so much of repression in their minds. They like to smoke, they like to perhaps have some drugs and all alcohol and other things, but they will repress these desires in front of their parents and the well-wishers. They don't want them to know, but they are not doing consciously. They are just unconsciously just waiting not to express themselves in these evil actions or the bad habits. They just repress it, but they are more dangerous because they get repressed. They are not suppressed by conscious exertion of the willpower, saying that I will not do it. It is bad for me, I will not do it. Whether my parents or my teachers and the other people who wish me well, even if they don't see me, even in their absence, I will not fall a prey. That is known as suppression, which is good. Whereas vichinna it can mean also repression. The repressed material remains powerful and influences the adult, and indirectly, it is like pressing a spring and sitting on it. The moment you get up, it will spring back. So the spring cannot be indefinitely kept repressed. So repression have to have to be avoided. It has to be avoided, because if the child or the growing youth, he tries to repress it out of fear of society or fear of parents or fear of, then he is doing a great harm to himself. That results in psychological problems. That results in uh, uh, certain complications of the mind. Very severe complications appear. And they, though they appear to be very steady, but internally they are totally disturbed. And when they try to express it, sometimes it can become fatal. So, in the prasupta avastha, we saw that they do not appear because of lack of stimulus. You are not getting a chance for the kleshas to manifest themselves. But in the repressive avastha, in the vichinna avastha, they do not appear because it is prevented by some fear, some pressure, unconscious fear or pressure. They are not active, but the moment that fear goes away, it will express itself, and it will express in a very, very strong way, and the person may lose his mental balance. So you have to understand, kleshas give trouble only when they are in the udara avastha, when they are freely expressed. Like some people say, they don't have any inhibition. They say, I don't care what you think, I will just go on doing what I think is right. There are such people who don't bother, they don't even have fear. It is known as udara avastha. There is no fear of society, fear of parents. They said, you go to hell, I'll do what I want. But there are other people who repress it out of fear, which is known as vichinna. Both are bad. Both are bad in the sense, both will lead to trouble. But the udara avastha is not good, but at least they will not cause some serious problem which is unknown to that person. It will be exposed and they will be scolded, and perhaps they will be confronted by good people, and who will tell them, you should not be doing this. How are you uh, able to get away with all these things? You should not be doing it. There will be some control, external control. Whereas if you have the vichinna avastha of suppressing the kleshas, then it happens in an unconscious way and you suffer internally. Externally, you're perhaps not doing it, but internal pressure is so much, and that leads to so many problems. Like people get depression, they may even commit suicide, and all those things happen because they have repressed it. The society is not allowing them to express it, but neither they are able to suppress it consciously. They are repressing it unconsciously. So the unconscious is creating problems, and that results in lot of uh, uh, problem, and that results to they end up destroying their whole personalities. So now we come to another aspect. We have finished all these sutras. Now we will try to understand the next sutra, which is yes, the what happens when the ego is attached to that. It is the apparent identity of the power of that seer, the something within us. Avidya, as I told you, avidya gives rise to asmita. Avidya means ignorance. The basic ignorance is there, but that gives rise to egoism. Only when the ego gets developed, the raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha manifest. So we have dealt with the tanukaran of the raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. But the fundamental problem, as Sri Ramakrishna says, the root problem, root cause of all the problems of the other three is this avidya. Avidya, of course, but avidya gives rise to asmita. So this apparent identity, that strong sense of ego, that has to be dealt with. How do you deal with it? Now we'll see that. So the idea here is that reactive mind is where our ego is there. There is behind every action of ours, there is one jnata, one who knows, one who perceives. Then there is a karta, one who thinks I am doing, that strong sense of ego. And another is bhokta. Bhokta means one who experiences. So one who knows, one who does, karta, one who experiences, the bhokta. They are all put together. In yoga, asmita is responsible for all these three. In Vedanta, the difference between Vedanta and yoga is that all the empirical activities they have classified into Gyata, Karta, and Bhokta. They say once you get rid of ego, your problem is solved. Whereas in Patanjali, Asmita is a problem, no doubt, but it is one of the kleshas. Just as you have to deal with raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha, you have to deal with this asmita also. It is just an obstacle. This ego is just an obstacle. Whereas in Vedanta, it is fundamental. Vedanta says this is the fundamental problem. You don't bother about the other kleshas. If you get rid of your ego, if you uh, surrender this ego to the higher self, either through bhakti or through jnana or through karma yoga, if you once you get rid of this, then you don't have to bother about the other kleshas. Whereas yoga doesn't say that. Yoga says go step by step. You have certain problems, you have raga, dvesha, reduce that, do tanukarana of the kleshas, reduce its impact, then you get rid of the ego. Because they understood that for manda adhikaris, that who are people who are not jnana, assumes that you are done with all, you have a certain element, a basic vairagya already there. You don't, they assume that raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha you have already taken care of, and then you have come to study this Advaita Vedanta. So Advaita Vedanta expect you to do that. If you are still struggling with the kleshas, the gross kleshas, strong likes, dislikes, then jnana may not be a good path for you, because they assume that your mind has been calmed down. It is a peaceful mind. You are not a beginner. You are not a manda adhikari. Manda adhikari means a lowest aspirant. You're not an aspirant who is terribly restless. You can't even think of jnana with a restless mind. So once you have crossed that, they expect you to handle your ego. But Patanjali is more down to earth. It says first take care of raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. These three things are troubling you enough. If you can handle that, it is more than enough. Don't bother about asmita right now. So this is the slightest difference. So the Purusha, uh, in Vedanta, there is a clear distinction. We make a clear distinction between the smaller ego that is known as empirical self, the jiva, and the real self. In yoga, unfortunately, we don't have this difference. It appears as the self or the drishta or a seer, it is also known as Kevala Purusha. Purusha is there because the problem with the Sankhya is they are dualists, or the yoga school is that they believe in many Purushas. Whereas Vedanta solves the problem by saying that there is only one self. What you see, the smaller self, is a very empirical self. It is there, but you don't have to bother. The moment you realize, you become one with the Supreme Self. Whereas here, that distinction is very clear. They also call it Kevala Purusha, because everybody has to deal with his own asmita and avidya. He has to remove it. So what is the difference between this avidya and asmita? We discussed about raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. We know what it is. So there is a fundamental question asked in yoga. What is the difference between avidya and asmita? So we have seen that both avidya and asmita are chitta vrittis. So we come to the second sutra, where yoga says, the Patanjali says, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So you have to take, if asmita and avidya are also vrittis, they cause vrittis, they are chitta vrittis. So also are the raga, dvesha, anger, and all those things. Raga, attachment, anger, dvesha, and anger or any kind of dislike, and also the fear, clinging to life. These are all chitta vrittis. They keep on appearing in the mind. But along with that, Patanjali says, even this avidya, the vritti of ignorance, the idea that I do not know, I know wrong things, the idea that I think Prakriti is Purusha, that is avidya. That is also a vritti according to Patanjali, and you have to totally stop these vrittis, whether it is avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. You have to handle all those things. Even asmita, the ego, it is nothing but a chitta vritti. Now and then you become puffed with the ego. So that is known as so avidya. The slight difference between avidya and asmita in yoga is that the notion of I that arises before full identification of Purusha with the Buddhi is known as avidya. Whereas asmita is the notion of I that you feel after full identification. My Buddhi, I am doing this. Just before that, it is avidya. It is ignorance, but you are not fully manifesting it. When the ignorance becomes a, a firm thing, like it becomes asmita, a strong sense of ego, that your buddhi tells you that this is Mr. So and so, and I am good, I am bad, I have these likes, these things I don't like. So all that other three kleshas just come rushing towards that uh, asmita, towards that ego. That is a lower kind of ego. Thakur perhaps in his own simple way said it is Pakami and Kachami. Kachami means a very raw ego. It creates a lot of troubles because all the other three. But avidya is a Paka. Avidya is, of course, it is just before that it has manifested. So to prevent that, Sri Ramakrishna or Vedanta proposes that direct it towards the Lord. Don't direct it towards the Purusha or towards the Prakriti. Direct it inward towards the Purusha, then it will not be harmful. It will be a ego, it will be an asmita, it will be a avidya, but still it is better than getting enmeshed in the gross things. So you have to take care of that. That is the slight difference. So in Patanjali actually does not use the word ahankara, which is used in Vedanta. Vedanta, ahamkara means that I-ness. Ahamkara is nothing but a part of Prakriti. It exists independent of Purusha. See, that is a very important thing to remember. When we worship Sri Ramakrishna, when we worship somebody whom we consider to be our Lord Ishta, he is free from ahankara. If he has ego, he is a jiva. That you have to remember. Since we are part of Prakriti, we have a body, we have a prana, we have a mind, we have so many things, layers of our existence causing so much of sorrow and problems. Asmita is a, uh, in Sankhya theory, the Asmita is independent of Purusha. Whereas in yoga, somehow, though they have taken the Sankhya philosophy, they say this Asmita is because the Purusha, unfortunately, though it is pure consciousness, somehow it identifies itself with the Buddhi. And I think I am a wise man, I am a spiritual man, I am an ugly man. All these things cannot come when you are identifying. So this ahankara is a separating principle. It separates the Purusha from the Purusha and Prakriti. It is a individuating, you can say, it creates the idea of individuality. I, you, we, all this individuality is ahankara. Whereas asmita is, according to yoga, according to Sankhya, it is an identifying principle. Somehow Purusha gets mixed up with Prakriti and asmita arises. This basic difference you have to understand. Then we'll know how we can handle it. So how do you destroy this ego now? The question here is, yoga does not go too much into theory like Vedanta, and it's a practical science. It says all you have to do is you have to destroy this ahankara. If the ahankara is a, Thakur used to say in his beautiful language, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if that rascal ego wants to stay, let it be a servant ego. Make that ego subservient to the Lord. You said, don't create trouble for me. Don't be puffed up with ego. Kachami, that is I, mine, and all these gross things. Don't attach it to Prakriti, but attach it to the Supreme Purusha and say that I am a servant of the Lord. I am a child of the Lord. So ego is still there, but it is a positive ego. And that is how you handle this idea of individuality, which causes all the misery. When the individuality goes, you find the whole process, Prakriti is like a Leela. That is why in the case of the incarnations, we say it is their divine Leela. They are not involved in the play. They don't do actions out of ego like we do. They are so free that they just enjoy everything, good, bad, unpleasant, pleasant, fear, everything that they experience. It is like a play. They have a strange peace within themselves, a kind of detachment. As Holy Mother used to say, I feel that there is a picture of bliss and peace within. Nothing shook her. You can imagine a state where all the troubles are there. All the troubles that you see in the gross world were there. Not that she was sitting in the clouds and enjoying peace. No, no, she was very much in the world. In fact, her troubles, the gross troubles, were far more intense or painful than us for an ordinary man. But for her, it was not a pain because she could detach. This Asmita was not there. Asmita never bothers the prophets or the incarnations and the great saints because they have given it up. That ego, that connection has gone, and the Purusha is sitting majestically in its own self. That is the whole goal of yoga. That's the whole goal of Vedanta. Somehow, somehow remove or get out of the clutches of the bondage of the gross, the mind, and all the identifying factors that cling to you, that create a big baggage on you, that create a burden on you. So that is why Jesus said, come unto me, all ye who are burdened by shedding your load, just come. That what did he mean? He mean just try to come back to your original state of Purusha, the original state of Brahman, the original state of pure consciousness, which does not suffer any misery. So that is what yoga tells us to do. We'll continue it in the next class. If there are some questions, you can quickly ask. Yeah, we have a few minutes. So how do you detach from klesha? That is what I was explaining all the while. Perhaps you just refer to a few classes because if there is discontinuity, then it may be difficult. What I was explaining throughout now was exactly how to detach from the klesha. I told you that detachment is through detachment of the will. The sankalpa, I explained to you. Please hear the talk again because then I have to repeat the whole talk. It is very clearly explained. If you just slowly with patience hear the talk which I gave, I answered. In fact, today my whole talk was on how to detach yourself from the kleshas. So I request the one who has asked the question to just go through. If you go through the same talk again, have a little patience and think, repeat it, maybe play it in a slow speed. Then you will get an idea what this klesha is and how to deal with it. 3 methods I discussed. It will be, then I have to give the whole talk again. I very clearly discussed the 3 methods which you can use to detach from this klesha because they are causing us all the trouble, all the sorrow. The solution to all our problems of life is by detaching somehow. Do it by Kriya Yoga, by Karma Yoga. That is one way. Do it by meditation, by japa. That is another way. You will find all the methods I have discussed in this and the previous classes. That's why I took so much of repetition was there. How to deal with these kleshas because they are making or breaking us. If we are happy, it is because our kleshas are under control. If you are unhappy, it is because these kleshas are clinging to our thoughts. They are the cause of sorrow. They are themselves not sorrow. When they attach to our thoughts, when they attach to our actions, they are pain-bearing obstructions. Remember the definition of klesha. It causes pain. So if you want to get rid of pain, you have to get rid of the klesha. Try to remember the 3 methods that I spoke of. Please listen to this talk again. It's there on YouTube. You can listen. You'll get a clear idea. So next question is, sometimes ignorance is bliss. Has it got any truth? Ignorance can never be bliss. It is just a It is just a stupid statement. It is just a, maybe it has come as part of, how can ignorance be bliss? Ignorance is the cause of all our dukkha. It can never be bliss. In a lighter way, people have said this, that if you are ignorant of certain things, say suppose you are ignorant of the bad effects of eating sweets. You are having diabetes, but you are ignorant about it. So if you are ignorant about the ill effects of eating sweets when you are having sugar, when you are having diabetes, it is a ignorance, you don't know, and you go on eating. So while eating there is bliss, but ultimately there is no bliss, ultimately you suffer. So in yoga or in Vedanta, ignorance can never be bliss. In fact, ignorance is the cause of all our problems. There can be absolutely no bliss. It gives you temporary bliss. Temporary bliss means temporary, it fools you. So one has to be very careful. That is why it is known as ignorance. So ignorance makes you, the ignorance makes the small fly or the small butterfly going, seeing the fire, it goes into it, then it gets burnt. But is that ignorance? Is that ignorance joyful? It, the sight of the fire may attract the insect, but when it gets burnt, it is not bliss. It is only pain and pain alone. So ignorance is not bliss. It is a wrong proverb, because if you think of the temporary benefits, ultimately it is going to destroy you. So ignorance is not bliss. Second question is, how come sometimes we see nasty people who seem to prosper and good people that suffer? How is that related to karma? Definitely it is related to, nasty people seem to enjoy, as I said, when you eat sweets, when you are highly diabetic, temporarily you get a feeling that I'm enjoying these sweets. And the other person who is sitting near you, he is denying himself. He says, no, I am diabetic, I will better not eat it. But you call him a fool. You say, see, I am eating, nothing has happened to me. That is exactly what is happening when evil people seem to prosper. They are prospering, but it won't last long. The karma will catch up with them. So it is better to be prudent and not to see the temporary effects. See, our life is eternal. Our karmas are eternal. So the impact it will create, it may not fructify immediately, but sooner or later you have to succumb. A person who defies and says, no, I am getting joy. Can you not see? I am eating this wonderful sweet meat. You also join me. The other fellow says, no, no, my doctor has told me not to eat. Now, who is more joyful? He, the other fellow seems to suffer. He has sweets, he cannot eat it. He doesn't eat it. And you say he is suffering, and the other fellow is jumping for joy because he is able to eat the sweets. But he doesn't realize one day it will kill him, whereas the other fellow will be saved. So anyway, this is just a crude example, but what I'm saying is that people may appear to, good people may appear to suffer, just as the person who is denying himself a sweet appears to suffer, but in the long run he will be. So karma is like that. Karma, a bad person who is accumulating bad karma, perhaps now he is enjoying the fruits of his good karma in the past, but soon they will be exhausted, and then he will reap, then he will suffer 10 times more than the person who is now suffering. So suffering should not be evaluated on a temporary basis. In the ultimate run, in the long run, the person who does evil has to suffer. He cannot escape the impact or the effects of his karma. Is it possible to have an idea of what type of karma we have accumulated, or we can only go on, wait and see? Yeah, it is possible for yogis, but it's better not to bother about it, because whatever is there inside, it has to be cleared. So Bhagwan Buddha gave a beautiful example. When Buddha was asked, how do we know what is good karma, and how do we go to the cause of the good karma? So he gave a beautiful example which is very apt. He says, suppose you are hit by an arrow. Now somebody has hit the arrow, somebody has taken a bow and released the arrow from a distance. Somehow it has come and hit you. Now, what is your immediate problem? First thing, you remove the arrow and stop the bleeding. Instead of doing that, if you, with the arrow in your body, if you go running trying to find the cause, it will harm you. So try to uh, solve the problem by doing upasana or sadhana, by performing yoga, and all the spiritual practices are meant to solve the problem. We have suffering, we have to solve it. We don't have to bother about the cause, what caused, how many. Suppose you come to know by some method all the past karma, is it going to help you? You have to reduce it. We have to reduce it. Whatever be the cause, you are suffering, you have to reduce that. You have been hit by the arrow. Buddha says, try to find out a solution and try to remove that sorrow, remove that arrow, and don't bother to run after the person who has hit it. He may have escaped also. Why are you wasting time? Because if you do that, you will suffer more pain. So we should not be wasting further time trying to go on asking questions about how the karma came, why do you suffer. These are good questions for intellectual understanding, but for a person who wants to solve the problem, as Buddha said, be practical. There is sorrow, try to remove it as early as possible before it is too late. That's the idea. So it is better to uh, uh, get rid of it, and we can only wait. We have to wait and see, means we have to do something about it. But at the same time, we should have patience and hope that that karma goes away.